with a degree of corrosion around the place, things like this can be a problem. Oh, that one's coming off easily. Because it's a chromed brass, that button. See that washer, you can see it's quite got a bit of rust on it. The spring too. But as I was saying, yeah, if there's any corrosion that locks that release button in place, that rewind button, it can break off because it's quite a small thread. Let's take that out. Lift out this. Take out the clutch and disassemble that. It's quite dry. Unhook the spring from the rewind button catch. Oh, that's another one that doesn't want to move. Yeah, that's a bit rusty. And the advanced shaft. Well, I know, or at least I suspect, that had been grossly over tensioned. See if we can get the screws out of this. That might mean that the return spring on the shaft is a bit distorted. Let's have a look. No, that looks fine. It's, if anything, it's lacking in lubricant. It suggests that someone's had that out and cleaned it and put it back together without lubricating it. I suppose that would make the movement a little bit stiff. Oh, I'm going to have a clean up here because I'm covered in dust and rubbish. Alright, let's have the door off the front. 2 screws. This is a little bit stiff as well. Cover that washer. I think that's just dirty old grease there, it's not corrosion. Do another washer at the top, there was, let's have that out too. I don't normally put the washers through the cleaner, they tend to get lost in the process. Shutter, we're going to have the shutter assembly out of the camera. See if I can get this thing unscrewed. It's not really engaging very well. Oh yeah, there it is. Well, I'll put the lens and shutter assembly aside. Back to this body. Okay, well, let's take the rangefinder coupling off. 1 through there, 2 on the front here. hold that plate to the inner helical. Now that's like old dried grease or oil on that front surface. It's gone like a lacquer. It's like just a thick varnish. I'll take this off. This is the cover for the gear on the front of the shaft. They can all go through the cleaner. This is all pretty nasty here. Look at the state of this dried out grease rubbish here. Okay, so the focus helical here, I need to mark that so that I can get things assembled back where they came from. Usually I scribe lines across with the tip of my scalpel. And if I can get the inner and the outer all lined up at the same time with the focus scale ring, I'll just scribe 2 lines across the bottom and 1 at the top. Now there's already somebody else's alignment mark here at much the same position. So they were doing the same thing. Remove these 4 screws. Excuse me. Okay, the 4 black screws hold the bellows to the back of the front standard. The 4 flathead or countersunk screws hold the retainer ring in place. Let's gather those screws up. Take the retainer ring off, lift out the inner and outer helical. That's pretty stiff. That's gooey with old grease. Yeah. 4 screws hold the focus mount to the front standard. And that's our bell bird. Okay, so now we want this whole shroud section and front standard out of the body. There's 2 screws at the top, 2 at the bottom. They're usually quite tight, and this one's no exception. So a little bit of hammer work here and I'll get these loose. And the camera's telling me that the battery's nearly flat. Hold on to your ears. No, it didn't move. Oh, that's bad. They're not moving. I'll give this some serious attention with the hammer. No, they did come loose, they just fought, particularly the ones at the bottom. They're obviously corroded in place. Right, let's see if this will lift out. Yeah, you can see corrosion here. See all this filth inside here. Well, that's corrosion. Possibly sand too. This is gooey with really old dried grease. I'll separate these components. That piece is called the sleeve. That's just about stuck with grease. And that part moves actually reasonably freely. It's got, this is, yeah, that certainly needs to be dismantled and cleaned. And that screw has the return spring on it. Put that to one side. What's left in the body, if anything? Oh, just this shaft. That screw holds the bracket and the bracket holds the shaft. This is the transfer shaft that couples to the shutter cocking rack and takes the action through to the front of the camera. What's that leave us? Well, this back catch, I'm a bit concerned about that. The cover wasn't going over that button particularly well, so it's possible that that button's loose, and it doesn't appear to be. But that back catch works quite well. This leatherette's flapping a bit here. It's also, I don't know whether you can see that, the pattern is all gone round here. That suggests to me solvent damage, which means that that's been glued back with something inappropriate typically. If it's been off and glued back, I'm reluctant to peel it off just so I can glue it back again. I think I will just lift that edge and get some glue under that. Yeah, that's definitely some old glue coming out from under there, whatever they've used. The rest of it, well, it's going to need some cleaning up. I mean, this is all thick adhesive stuck on the base there. That all needs to come off because there's no way I'm going to get the leatherettes to lie flat over those lumps and bumps. So I'll set to clean this lot up, get these components away in the ultrasonic cleaner, and next time you see this lot, we'll be starting to put things back together, hopefully. Well, it's late afternoon on a dismal day in Dunedin. I've got the body all cleaned up. The door, as you'll notice, swings nicely now. I tried to get the pin out of that. There was no go, it was not coming out. I was able to flush it with some naphtha and rub some oil into it. I put a few drops of oil on there and rubbed it in. That's as good as gold. The back catch, I've lubricated that too, and that opens and shuts nicely. In fact, it opens so nicely that as soon as you do this and the button hits the bench, the back flies open. So that's a minor annoyance. And the answer to that, of course, is to put the tripod socket back in. So that's what I'll do first of all, I think. These screws look quite good. It's not uncommon for them to be a bit corroded, but they actually look quite good. So they must have had enough glue on them to stop any moisture getting through there. That'll stop that flying open. I can bang it on the bench as much as I like now and that won't give me any grief. While I've got this here, I think I'll put the rewind back in place. So we'll start with a bit of synthetic grease. Put it on the inside piece. Slide that in here. This is keyed by that tab on the end. Taking some more synthetic grease, I'll just lubricate this bush. And it's usually worth lifting this tab as you push the shaft through. Saves you having to, otherwise you can bend that tab up and you end up with a catch that that either rattles loose or it's unusually stiff. So I'll put this on here, and this serves another useful purpose, as we'll soon find out, because I tie a rubber band around that to the shutter release once I get to that stage, so that the shutter release can't fall out and cause me grief. Okay, what else can I do while I'm there? I think I could probably put that strap lug in position too, since this is a camera, an earlier model, and the earlier models did not have the chrome trim plate top and bottom, so I can put that plate there right now. That's even better for tying the rubber band around. Yeah, some of these screws are not as pretty as they used to be. The heads show a little bit of distortion from all the stress that they received when I was trying to get them loose. Okay, that's good. Now the front components, all of this. Now I've cheated a bit. You can see I've already put this piece back together, and I've cheated even further and I've lubricated a few things. But let's start here, put those springs in place in the buttons and fit the buttons in to the front standard, top and bottom. Right, taking this with the buttons compressed, I can slide this into the outer shroud, and as I've got that nicely lubricated with a bit of grease already on those tracks, top and bottom, you can see that slides in nicely. So that part's done. We need this. This is the transfer shaft that carries the action from the cocking rack at the back of the camera through to the shutter at the front. So I need to apply a bit of synthetic grease to this. You can be reasonably generous with that. It fits in to the body right there in that top corner, and this is the bracket that holds it in place. And that's held in with a very short round head screw, unlike any other screw on the camera. That bracket will move backwards and forwards because that screw hole is oversized, and what I've found from experience is if I slide it back so that I've got 4/1000ths of an inch clearance between the rack and the body, then that'll work quite nicely, that the rack will move smoothly but there's not too much play. If there's too much play, effectively what can happen is if this bracket slides all the way forward, the rack can slide forward, or the little gear can slide forward, or one can slide back, and instead of contacting across the full width of the gear, they might only contact across half the width of the gear, and consequently rapid failure soon happens. But this should be just the job. It should run nice and smoothly, but there's not undue clearance there. We'll take that rack out, slide this front section into place. Oh, hang on a minute, there's something missing there. And I know what it is. Where's the sleeve? Here is the sleeve. The sleeve is this piece, which operates our shutter release. That slides in there. And the sleeve can get loose if the shutter release shaft falls out and you tip the camera on its back or something. That sleeve can fall in and cause lots of weeping and gnashing of teeth. So we had 4 screws to hold this central piece in. I'm not sure that's one of the originals because it's not mutilated enough. That one there is a little bit ugly. These required some hammer work, as I recall, to get them loose. And at the base, oh yeah, these ones are uglier still. Get all 4 screws in place before you start tightening things up. You can afford to put ugly screws down here because of course they'll be hidden by the leatherette. No one will ever see them again. Well, perhaps in another 50 years somebody will have this apart and I'll have a look. But then they'll just blame the cavemen who did the job last time. Okay, so that's all in. What else do we need? We need the shutter release shaft. And if I don't put that in now, I'll open the front. The sleeve will take the opportunity to fall out. And it's very good at getting down into the gap between the bellows and the shroud. And of course, it can fall out, but it's impossible to put the thing back that way. Okay, so I'll put that in there. Now the sleeve can't fall out. That's trapped by the shutter release. If I put a rubber band from here to here, that'll be as safe as houses. So the front opens and closes nicely. I can start assembling the focus stuff. Alright, let's put that rubber band round there. Keep that nice and safe. Okay, so that's good. This focus mount stuff, we need to get that in place. First thing to go in is this is the focus mount really. That needs to go in place. It's been through the ultrasonic cleaner. As a result, the screws at the back of this aren't as black as they used to be. So I'll take the opportunity to just go over those with a marker pen. Just to blacken those up, so that they're not in the slightest reflective. This goes in the body, and we have 4 nickel plated round head screws that hold the focus mount to the front standard. So I'll just put those in place. That looks fine. I'll just collapse that front there and make sure that shaft pops up through the hole. That's better. And do those 4 screws up. Okay, so far so good. Let's have a look at the inner and outer helical. Now these are marked, of course, so that I can get the alignment correct. Let's just put this in here and see where we start off. See how far wrong I am. Okay, so my two double lines should be right around there, so I need to move that round a couple of notches. Start it again. And oh, I'm one too far there, so I need to go this way a notch. You can do a lot of toing and froing doing this until you get it right. Okay, that's good. So when the front surfaces are level with each other, my alignment mark here and my double alignment mark there are in place. So I know I've got that bit right. Now I'm just going to run a bit of naphtha over this, which is the lightest of light lubricants, and I'm just running this backwards and forwards. These two brass components will polish against each other. They'll rub down those high spots. Just make sure that's as smooth as smooth. That's good. Okay, so now I want to put some helical grease on here. So I'll use my helical grease, which is Helimax XP optical instrument and helical grease, it's called, with PTFE, the wonder product. Okay, this works well. I just want a little bit in about 5 or 6 spots around the outside. That's probably over generous. Scrape some of that off. Then just work that in. Wipe off the excess at the back. Run some around the outside here. This is where the outer helical runs in the focus mount, and the inner helical runs on the two guide rails here and here. And they're the ones with the holes. So I'm just putting a spot of this helical grease in there. It wouldn't need to be helical grease, but that's what I've got on my hand, so that's what it's going to be. And then put this in place. Now we know which way is up because I put 2 lines at the bottom and 1 at the top. Check that it moves smoothly. That all appears to be very good.